some 69% of people who lost their jobs have returned in some capacity, 8.5% unemployment. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's right. That's good to see the economy slowly getting back to normal. And of course, we expected this. And if you put Victoria to one side, which is almost a special set of circumstances here, I think you can see the economy is coming back. I mean, of the 1.3 million people who either lost their jobs or had their hours reduced, almost 700,000 of those are now back at work. And interestingly, I mean, it's about 46% of those are in New South Wales. So New South Wales is overrepresented in the economic recovery, if you like. And I think, in large part, you look at the policy settings that are in place. And New South Wales has had a less severe lockdown than the other states. It's kept its borders open. It's been encouraging normal activity, the functioning of schools and things like that. And I think this shows you that, there's a balance that has to be struck here, of course, between public health and protecting the economy. But I think New South Wales is probably doing the best job of any of the states in getting that balance right.
Well, I mean, led by an absolutely cracking contact tracing team.
They have got a very good contact tracing team. And I mean, look, I had to get my daughter tested last week because she came down with cold and flu symptoms. She tested negative, but I was just very impressed with how quick and efficient the testing regime was. And I've heard anecdotally as well, the contact tracing regime has been excellent, including for a few outbreaks in my own electorate of Wentworth.
Yeah. Now, I mean, while we talk about New South Wales leading the economic recovery, other states have still got a ways to go. Queensland and the Northern Territory are going not so well at the moment, if we put it lightly. Unemployment in Queensland at 11.4%. I mean, is that and presumably that's the tourism sector there that's hurting harder than anything else. Is that an indication that, while the Premier says she's not going to reopen the border anytime soon, does that suggest that maybe, well, we should have another look at that?
Well, I think it shows you that closing the borders is not cost-free. I mean, it's costing people livelihoods, it's costing people businesses, particularly in Queensland, which is so tourism dependent. Australians aren't able to visit Queensland, people aren't able to visit their family there. Of course, that's going to have an impact. And look, you've seen with this outbreak in the Queensland Youth Detention Centre and at a shopping centre in Indooroopilly, the fact that Queensland's borders have closed does not mean that the virus has been eliminated. And I think, we all need to get used to the idea that this virus will continue to be present in our lives, and we need to take steps to lower the risk and mitigate the damage that it causes. But, normal life does need to resume as well, and normal economic activity. And opening the internal borders within Australia, even whilst our external borders remain restricted, would be a massive boost to economic activity.
But the federal government, it seems, are powerless in its attempts to reopen borders at the moment because premiers are calling the shots. So in one way, could you suggest that, the tail's wagging the dog here?
Well, I think, look, we've just got to keep making the case, and I know the Treasurer has been and the Prime Minister has been to state premiers about why it's in their own interests of their own people and their own businesses, their own livelihoods, to reopen their borders as safely as possible, as quickly as possible. We need to remain, nimble here. If outbreaks happen or we see something like we saw in Victoria, we need to revisit those settings. But I think, we do need to be on the pathway back towards a normal economy, because ultimately it's people's livelihoods, it's people's jobs, it's people's employment that's on the line here.
OK, the Victorian Liberal Party's in a spot of bother this morning, Dave. What's your thoughts on this? It all relates to branch stacking, and this follows a few months ago. We all know that the Labor Party was in a whole lot of trouble over this. We just had Anthony Albanese, his press conference suggesting, right, well, he acted quickly. Now it's up to Scott Morrison to act quickly as well. What's your view on that?
Look, I didn't watch the program. I was driving from Sydney down to Canberra last night, but I've read the reports of it. Look, I think obviously the allegations that have been made are serious ones, and they should be investigated. And I believe they've been referred to the Department of Finance today. I just make the distinction here, though. Adam Somyurek, who was the focal point of the Labor investigation, was a sitting minister in the Victorian Labor government. The person who has the most allegations against them here is a party office bearer in Victoria. So it's right and appropriate that the Victorian division of the Liberal Party looks at this in the first instance.
Does this show that there is a need for a federal archaic?
I don't know. I think these allegations that have been made are serious, and let's see them, come out and be tested a bit more. But there are mechanisms at the federal level to look at, entitlements, to look at employment of political staff, all these sorts of things, and to check whether they've complied with the law in doing so. So I think this will be properly investigated, and let's see what the investigation finds.
Hey, Dave, you're probably not aware of this. There's just got some breaking news in the bottom of our screen at the moment. 15 deaths, 116 new cases in Victoria at the moment. That's just come in from Victoria's Department of Health. 15 deaths, very sad news, no doubt. 116 cases. It's heading in the right direction, isn't it? Which you know, thankfully, it seems like they might have a hold on things.
Look, absolutely. I mean, unfortunately, the death number is still significantly high, and of course, the death tally lags the incidence of cases and lags the lockdown as well. So that's why we continue to see high numbers of deaths, even though the cases are coming down in Victoria. But the case numbers, which is the sort of the leading indicator, if you like, they are coming down, and that's encouraging to see. Although, of course, every life that has been lost in this, which is now over 400 in Victoria alone, is a real tragedy.
Just finally, Dave, I want to get your thoughts on this investigation on the front page of the Australian newspaper this morning. So it turns out that China has been recruiting Australian scientists for a secret research program, but any inventions are patented by China and also obliges them to abide by Chinese law. What do you make of that?
Well, I think this is deeply worrying, and I think what compounds that is the fact that the Australian universities that employ these academics don't seem to know anything about it, or only became aware of it when the Australian put the allegations to them. I mean, I think if you're employing an academic, I think you have a right to assume that their loyalty is to you, and that any research they do will be and patents they file and whatnot will be, properly the property of the university in Australia. Now, it seems like some of these academics have been working for two masters unbeknownst to their Australian employer, and I think that's troubling. I mean, I'm all for scientific research collaboration, but it needs to be done openly, and it needs to be done transparently, and it needs to be done with the knowledge of your employer and the relevant authorities.
Well, what about this 1,000 Talents program? That's the plan. The FBI has reportedly called it a national security threat. Would you agree?
I'd need to know a little bit more about it. I mean, I know it was initially designed to attract overseas Chinese talent back to China, and that's a legitimate goal and aspiration. That's understandable. But if Australian academics and Australian universities are having their own research products compromised or taken advantage of without their knowledge as a result of this program, well, that is concerning.
Okay.